get started on the today's session.
Thanks.
I'll quickly share my
It's over
screen.
to you. Yeah, I've started the recording, so yeah, you can continue.
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome again. So today we will talk about single sign-on in VMware Cloud Foundation 9.0. So as already told during the introduction, I'm Haritej. I am a virtualization and infrastructure specialist. This is a standard disclaimer. I'll not go over it. I'll just pause for a few seconds. You can go over it. All right, this is again another disclaimer. All the views expressed are my own. There's no responsibility from Broadcom side or VMware side for any of the content that is published here. So this will be the agenda for the next 45 minutes to 1 hour. We'll first discuss about some of the key terminology in respect to VCF. This is specifically keeping in mind that we may have several customers who might have been traditional vSphere customers. Then we will discuss about what is single sign-on, why do we need VCF single sign-on. Then we will talk about the deployment modes and architecture, followed by an end-to-end use case demo, which we will pause for Q&A. Before we discuss about the actual VCF SSO topic, right? Let us see how a VCF deployment typically looks like, and let's try to understand the various terms associated with a VCF deployment. So on the left-hand side, I have VCF fleet managing a single VCF instance. This VCF instance is expanded on the right-hand side. Now, before we talk about what is fleet, let us see how a single VCF instance looks like. What is a VCF instance? A VCF instance is nothing but a combination of one management domain and one or more workload domains. Now, what is a domain? A domain is nothing but a combination of your vCenter, NSX manager, and the vSphere clusters that this vCenter and NSX are managing. So typically, management domain stands for the domain in which only your infrastructure or management VMs are running. Here, there won't be any workload VMs that would be running. So now coming to a workload domain, this is the place where typically any of your workload VMs or workload containers would run. This is also again nothing but a combination of your vCenter NSX manager and the vSphere clusters that are managed by your vCenter. But this is a place where your customer workloads would be running, be it the virtual machines or be it the containerized workloads. So in a single VCF instance, we can have one management domain and multiple workload domains. Now, having discussed about what a VCF instance would look like, let us see what is VCF fleet. VCF fleet is nothing but a logical abstraction of one or more VCF instances that shares common set of services like the VCF operations and VCF automation. We will get a broader picture once we see a multi-instance deployment view. But for now, VCF operations is nothing but your management and monitoring plane for your entire VCF stack. And VCF automation is nothing but your self-service portal from which you can provision your virtual machine-based workloads or the containerized workloads. Now let us see how a multi-instance view of a VCF deployment would look like. On the left-hand side, I again have a single instance view of a VCF deployment. And on the right-hand side, I have a multi-instance view of the VCF deployment. So in a multi-instance view of VCF deployment, you can see here there are multiple VCF instances from VCF instance 1, 2, and so on up to VCF n. So in each of the instance, we have only depicted management domain for the sake of simplicity, but each instance can have multiple workload domains in addition to the management domain. Every instance will have mandatorily a management domain and multiple workload domains, one or more workload domains. Now, if you see here, we do have VCF operations and VCF automation that is shared across these multiple VCF instances. And that is why we are calling the entire set of VCF instances together with its VCF operations and VCF automation as VCF fleet. So broadly put, VCF fleet is nothing but a logical abstraction of one or more VCF instances that share common set of services. In this case, it is VCF operations and VCF automation. I'll take a pause here for any questions. All right, I'll consider it as no. So proceeding further, let us see about SSO in general and what is VCF SSO and why do we need it. So in general, right, SSO stands for single sign-on, and we use single sign-on day in, day out in our life. Like for example, in any enterprise, the enterprise might have like multiple applications, be it a payroll application, workday, mailbox, or a drive application. So the enterprises configure the identity providers in such a way that if you log into one of these applications, let's say you log into the payroll application, you wouldn't be asked to enter the credentials again for logging into Workday or logging into your mailbox. Usually, you would be automatically signed in based on the authentication credentials that you have already provided while you are logging in for the first application. So this is what we call as SSO, single sign-on. You log in once and reuse the rest of the applications. Now coming to VCF SSO, here also the concept is same. So it is nothing but the centralized identity and access management layer where you log into any of the VCF component and you wouldn't be asked for the credentials again. So it enhances your user experience. So let us imagine a situation where you don't have VCF SSO and say you have a huge VCF deployment where you have like multiple VCF instances, and in which each VCF instance, let's say you have like 10 workload domains and one management domain. And each of this management domain and workload domain would be again associated with multiple components like the NSX, vCenter, and VCF operations and automation managing across the fleet. So in the absence of VCF SSO, you would need to typically maintain your local account, the administrator accounts or any other privilege-based accounts, right? And the credentials of it separately. So when you're logging into, let's say, 20 different components associated with 10 different domains or instances, you would need to enter the credentials corresponding to each of this component. But with VCF SSO, if you log in once into any of the component, let's say you log into vCenter, your login to NSX or login to VCF operations would be automatically done. This will also help us to maintain the enterprise security and compliance because you are just registering your identity provider with the VCF SSO. You are not going to set up any new identity provider just for the sake of VCF. This will also enhance the operational scalability. As we discussed, you don't need to log in multiple times. You log in once, and then like the rest of the components would allow you in. Let us see some key implementation details about VCF SSO. VCF SSO is implemented through something called as VCF Identity Broker. So what is a VCF Identity Broker? It is an intermediary that sits between your enterprise's identity provider and various VCF components. It supports multiple identity providers. So enterprises typically can have like any of the identity providers. Some of them, the popular, the new age identity providers like Okta, Ping, Entra, ADFS, or the traditional directory-based identity providers like ADO or LDAP, Open LDAP, etc. Right? So we have various identity providers, and all of them are supported. You do have some of the not so common ones like Keycloak, which is getting more popular nowadays, right? So those can also be configured as a like additional SAML based provider or a OADC based provider. So we support both SAML and OADC based authentication protocols. SAML stands for Security Assertion Markup Language. So the fundamental difference between SAML and OADC is that whenever you try to sign into your identity provider, would send a response back in the form of XML. This is in case of SAML. In case of OADC, which is a more modern one, so the response related to your claims or group memberships would be sent in the form of a JSON. We also support multiple user group provisioning methods like SCIM, JIT, and ADO or LDAP. SCIM stands for System Cross-Domain Identity Management. JIT stands for Just-in-Time User Provisioning. And ADO or LDAP is our typical legacy Active Directory and LDAP based. So in case of SCIM, which is a more popular one with the modern IDPs like Octaping, it is a push mechanism where the users in your identity provider would be pushed to the VCF's identity broker. In case of JIT, it is like once you log in, only then the user would be realized in the identity broker. It is not a push mechanism. These are traditional user group provisioning methods, which are like more popular in the market, and we support all these user group provisioning methods. I'll take a pause here for any questions.
I think so far we are good. We haven't seen any question yet.
Okay, yeah. I'll just proceed with the next slide.
Sure.
Let us discuss about what are the various deployment modes available for the VCF identity broker. So the first one that is available is the embedded based VCF identity broker. So if we see the image here, your VCF identity broker is sitting inside your vCenter. So this is your vCenter of the management domain. In case of embedded deployment mode, your VCF identity broker sits inside your management domain vCenter. And this identity broker connects to your identity providers based on your organization's identity provider, be it a modern IDP, a SAML or OIDC based, or be it a Active Directory or a Open LDAP based. So it connects to your identity provider, and all your components, the VCF components like the NSX, the VCF automation or VCF operations or HCX would be behaving like OIDC clients for your identity broker. So identity broker talks to your identity provider, and the components would be interacting with identity broker as the OIDC clients. And your identity broker sits inside your vCenter in case of the embedded mode of deployment. Now let us see how a appliance mode of identity broker deployment looks like. In case of appliance mode, the identity broker doesn't sit inside your vCenter. It is sitting outside your vCenter. And similar to the embedded mode of deployment, it is also connecting to your identity providers, and all the other components are still acting as your OIDC clients. But the only fundamental difference here is that in case of embedded, it sits inside your management domains vCenter. But in case of appliance, it is sitting outside of any of the vCenter, and it is typically deployed as a 3-node architecture. We usually recommend appliance-based identity broker for any large customer or enterprise-based customer. Embedded identity broker can be used for like POC purposes or very small scale deployments. Now let us see how the SSO architecture looks like. We have two architectures. One is the dedicated mode of deployment and the other one is the shared mode of deployment. Let us see how a dedicated mode of deployment looks like. On the left hand side, I have two regions in which I have 5 VCF instances, and each of the VCF instance has a VCF identity broker deployed here. And each identity broker is again talking to the external identity provider. So this is the dedicated mode of deployment. Now on the right hand side, I have a shared mode of deployment where my identity broker is sitting only on instance 2, but it is shared across multiple VCF instances even within the region and outside the region. So here as well, I have like 5 VCF instances, but my identity broker is sitting only on instance 2. It can also sit anywhere, be it instance 1, instance 3, but for the demonstration purpose here, we have it on the instance 2. So this is the SSO architecture. We have dedicated architecture and we have shared architecture. Now let us see some of the considerations or limitations with respect to VCF SSO. So the SSO configuration needs to be always done from the VCF operations console. So as discussed during the beginning of the session, right, VCF operations is your single management and monitoring interface for your entire VCF infrastructure. So the configuration of SSO needs to be done from the VCF operations console. It cannot be done from the individual components. The SDDC Manager UI client authentication doesn't support VCF SSO. We have announced a deprecation of SDDC Manager UI alone, not the appliance entirely in our VCF 9.0. So accordingly, we have also taken a decision that we don't need to support VCF SSO with the SDDC Manager UI client. And we also don't support ELM with VCF SSO. If you need VCF SSO and if you have a ELM based setup, you would need to perform break ELM and then convert your VCF vCenters into isolated domains, and then only you can perform the VCF SSO. Any existing VC identity provider configuration would be typically overwritten by VCF SSO. Let us say you have a VCF instance setup and you have logged into your management domain vCenter or workload domain vCenter, and directly you have configured an identity provider. Now let's say you went back to your operations console and you configured the identity provider again for performing the VCF SSO configuration. So whatever existing identity provider configuration that is present in your vCenter would be overwritten by the VCF SSO configuration. We maintain a single component logout mechanism, which means let's say you log into your vCenter, NSX, VCF operations and perform logout from one component. So let's say you logged in using the same user into all these three components. So if you perform logout from one of the component, you won't be logged out from the other components. Your login will still be valid for the other components. So this is the implementation decision we have taken. Before we look at the configuration flowchart, I'll again pause for a minute if there are any questions. All right, I'll again take it as no. Now, before we see an end-to-end use case demo, let us see how
There are some questions.
Okay.
There are some questions, but Uday, should we take it now or we can take it towards the end?
Yeah, I think I can see like 5 open questions now. But maybe we can take them right now.
All right, yeah.
Okay.
Let
So
me see the questions.
yeah, can you just read the question, or you want me to read this for you?
I am just checking, but
Okay.
one moment. Just a moment.
Mhm.
Okay, VCF identity outbound connection to the IDP or also need inbound connection from the IDP. So in most cases, we don't need an inbound connection from the IDP, but in cases where we are using a scheme-based provisioning, we would need an inbound connection from the IDP, which can be avoided by using some intermediary proxies. SCIM stands for System Cross-Domain Identity Management. Do you have any document links, please? We will share it towards the end of the session, Ahmad. Okay, VADB embedded and external use case. So from an end customer perspective, both the embedded and external behavior would be the same. But we recommend embedded only for small enterprises or like small scale deployments, considering that it won't be able to scale for like more number of instances. And in case of external, we do deploy a 3-node architecture. So it has high availability implicitly available. So we recommend that architecture for the most of the enterprise customers. VCF identity broker would require the high availability configuration in the enterprise deployment. It is by default. So if you go for an external deployment, the appliance-based identity broker deployment, it would be typically a 3-node architecture. So it will be implicitly highly available. Also, do we configure the same for MFA? Yes, the answer is largely yes. So MFA also can be performed using the same PIDB. What is the latency requirements between the two sites sharing same VIDB? I don't have the exact numbers on top of my mind, Arup, but we will share it probably towards the end of the session. Are we not able to see the screen? Right now, I have stopped the sharing just to see the questions. I'll start the sharing again. Identity broker appliance to be configured per VC or is it per VCF instance? Appliance or even if it is embedded, it is not even per VCF instance, it is per VCF fleet. So even multiple VCF instances can share the same identity broker appliance. So let's say you have 5 VCF instances, you can have a single identity broker appliance that can be shared across all your 5 VCF instances. I hope that clarifies the questions to a large extent. We will go back to the presentation now.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, now coming back to the presentation, we will look at how the configuration flowchart would look like. Post this, we will see an end-to-end demo. So this would be typically the steps that we will perform in the demo. We first need to select what is the VCF instance that we want to configure VCF SSO with. Let's say you have a multi-instance deployment and you have like 5 VCF instances. You would first need to select what is a VCF instance on which you want to perform the VCF SSO configuration. So once you select the instance, you would need to choose what is the deployment mode. Is it the embedded mode of deployment or the appliance mode of deployment? As mentioned, embedded is suitable for smaller deployments and appliance is what we recommend for the larger deployments. Once you choose the deployment mode, you would need to choose what is the identity provider that is available with your enterprise. So based on the identity provider that is available, you can provide the details corresponding to your identity provider. Like let's say if you are configuring the modern IDP, you would need to provide details like the shared secrets and the ODC URLs, etc. And if it is an Active Directory based configuration, you would provide details like what is the domain controller details, what is the base DN, those kind of details you would need to provide based on your identity provider. So once you provide the details of your identity provider during the SSO configuration, you can select what are the users and groups that you want to import into the VIDB. So this we call it as user and group provisioning. And once the users and groups are provisioned, you can choose to configure VCF SSO for the vCenter and NSX instances that are available within the VCF deployment. So in the VCF deployment, let's say you have, for the simplicity, let us assume you have a single VCF instance deployed, which has like multiple domains. Say you have one management domain and 5 workload domains. You may have like 6 vCenters here corresponding to the one corresponding to the management domain and 5 corresponding to your workload domains. Likewise, you will have multiple NSX managers corresponding to your management domain and workload domains. So you can choose to configure what are the components on which you want to configure VCF SSO. For example, let's say you may only want to configure VCF SSO for the workload domain vCenters and then like workload domain NSX, and maybe you want to manage the authentication using the local users for your management vCenter and management NSX. That is also possible. You can choose what are the components on which you want to configure VCF SSO. So once you configure vCenter and NSX with the VCF SSO, then you can select the VCF SSO configuration on your VCF operations and VCF automation appliance. Again, this is also optional. You can choose to configure or you can skip configuring this. And optionally, you can also configure on other VCF components like the operations HCX or logs, VCF operation for logs, etc. So once this is done, you would need to log into individual component to perform the roles assignment. So from the VCF operations console, we only perform the identity provider configuration, user group provisioning, and what are the components that needs to be part of the VCF SSO. But the role assignment would vary from the component to component. For example, if you want to assign a particular role in the vCenter, you would need to log into vCenter and perform the role assignment. Likewise with NSX or even with VCF operations. So if no further questions, we will quickly move to the demo.
Hello everyone. Let's see a quick demo on how to configure VCF SSO.
I hope the demo is audible. Can someone please confirm?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, sure. I'll go ahead.
And how to leverage SSO users to authenticate and authorize into various VCF components. I have logged into VCF operations console here and we are in the home page. So first have a quick glance on how the demo environment looks like. So in this demo environment, we have one VCF instance which contains 2 VCF domains, one management domain and one VI domain. So each of the VCF domain is associated with one vCenter. Let's try to go ahead and configure the identity broker first. We're going to the identity and access management page here. So my demo environment has a single VCF instance that is getting listed here. The name of the VCF instance is management. So the reason for naming it as management is because all the management components like the operations, the fleet management, the identity broker, everything is sitting in this particular VCF instance. Now
you can actually name it anything. So the demo for the demo purpose, we name the first VCF instance name as management. It can just be named as VCF instance 1 or anything can be named.
Selecting VCF instance by name management here. So we can choose a deployment mode, which is either embedded or appliance. So we will go ahead with appliance mode to begin with. And in the end, we will also see how to configure the VCF SSO in the embedded mode. So if I select the identity broker appliance type, it says there's no identity broker appliance available. So please go to lifecycle to deploy it. So let us start with the deployment of the identity broker appliance. So we can see that identity broker is not added. So let's click on add here. So this will start the deployment of the identity broker appliance. So it gives the standard details like version, deployment type. So currently only small is a supported deployment type. So we'll go ahead and choose the default small deployment type. I have pre-created a certificate here with name VIDB for this demo purpose, which I'll choose for the appliance deployment. You can choose the various details like when the certificate is going to expire and what is the subject details and what is the DNS name of this certificate, which has been pre-created. So we can select where we want to deploy this identity broker appliance. I'll be selecting the management VC, and I have a single management cluster here with name management-anchor inside the management data center. So folder and resource pool are optional. I'll go ahead and choose the management resource pool. So we will choose the VM management network for this particular appliance deployment. We'll choose the vSAN data store that is available. So what is the domain name of the appliance that we are going to deploy? So I'll be providing the domain name here. We can provide the same domain search path. So what are the DNS? What is the DNS server that we want to configure for this VIDB appliance? So I have my DNS server that I have already defined for this VCF instance, which I will choose for my identity broker appliance as well. Likewise, for the time sync mode, I'll use an NTP server and I'll choose the pre-configured NTP server here. We need to provide what's the default gateway for the appliance that is getting deployed. We're providing the net mask details as well. All right. Now we need to provide what's the FQDN of the VIDB broker appliance. We'll be providing vidb.vcf.nimbus.internal as FQDN here. And what is the node prefix? So the node prefix is nothing but this is the name of the VM that will be deployed in the management domain. So when your identity broker appliance is deployed, this will be the prefix for the VMs. So what is the primary VIP? The primary VIP is nothing but the IP corresponding to the FQDN that we are providing here, which in my case is 250015. We can choose to provide additional VIPs, which is not mandatory. And what is the cluster node pool? So cluster node pool is nothing but we are going to deploy this identity broker in a high availability mode. So basically it will be a 3-node deployment that we are choosing here. So I can choose to provide additional IPs for the additional high availability nodes that will be getting deployed. So I'll be providing the IP address range of 250016 to 250019 here. So we also need to select the component password here. So we can choose to select your VCF management VC password itself. All right, now we have provided all the details, so we can click on next. We need to run the pre-checks. So basically it will do pre-checks like whether the IP is free, whatever the IP pool that we provided, is it having some overlapping IP? So all those details it will validate, and whether the FQDN resolution is proper or not. I'm running a pre-check here. This will take some time. We'll wait. All right, we can see that it took a couple of minutes to perform the pre-checks and the pre-checks have all passed. So now we can just do next and click on submit. So we can also export the configuration if you want for future deployment. Let's say if we have to redeploy or something. So once we click on submit, it will take probably around 30 to 45 minutes for the deployment. So we will wait for the deployment to complete and we will come back. We can now see that the deployment of the identity broker appliance is completed as all the stages of the deployment are completed. Now let's go back to the identity and access page and start configuring the VCF SSO in the appliance mode.
So far we have just tried to configure the VCF SSO in the appliance mode and it gave an error that there's no appliance that was found. So we went back and performed the appliance deployment. Now that we have the appliance available, we can go ahead and configure VCF SSO in the appliance mode.
We're back to the identity and access management page. I'm selecting my VCF instance. the only VCF instance in this environment is named management. We're selecting the deployment mode here. We will select the appliance mode. If you remember earlier, when the identity broker appliance was not deployed, it has asked us to go back to the lifecycle page and deploy it. Now that the identity broker appliance is already deployed, it is allowing us to proceed further. Now let us configure the identity provider. VCF SSO supports multiple modern identity providers like Okta, Ping, Entra, ADFS, and any other generic SAML 2.0 provider as well. Likewise, it also supports the legacy directory-based identity providers like AD over LDAP and OpenLDAP. For this demo purpose, we will choose AD over LDAP. Now we need to provide the details of the identity provider of your organization. So we can provide any directory name. I'll provide demo dir as the name of the directory. I'll provide my primary domain controller corresponding to my AD over LDAP. I'm choosing LDAP here instead of LDAP-S, though the recommended is LDAP-S for security reasons. I do not have a secondary domain controller. I'll provide my base DN, bind username, and bind user password. We can review the details and click on finish. Now we need to configure the user and group provisioning. So far, we have only linked the organization's identity provider to the VCF environment. We will now do the user and group provisioning. We need to do the attribute mappings. So what would be the attribute name in identity broker versus what's the name in the active directory? Most of them we can leave as default. Employee ID is not mapped, so we will map the employee ID against the employee ID in the active directory. We can choose to sync the nested groups or we can ignore syncing of nested groups. We need to provide the base group distinguished name. So once we provide, it says there are thousands of groups available in this active directory. So we can choose what groups we want to provision. So for this demo purpose, I have a few groups created with demo as a name. I'll select all these 10 groups to be imported. We need to provide the base user DN. So we can filter the users that we want to import. Again, we have a few users created with demo prefix. Since the AD has so many users, it takes some time. So we have about 50 users with this prefix. We will try to import probably around 20 of them. Clicking on finish, we can see that there are 10 groups and 20 users that are selected for provisioning. So once this is done, we can click on done. Now we have imported about 10 groups and 20 users from our Active Directory into the VCF SSO environment. So far, we have configured the VCF SSO, imported the users and groups. Now we need to configure individual components, which needs to be part of the SSO configuration. I'll click on Start. As mentioned in the description of the environment, we have one VA domain and one management domain in the current VCF environment. And in that VA domain, we have one vCenter and one NSX. Likewise, one management vCenter and one management NSX. We can choose what are the components in which we want to configure the SSO. For the demo purpose, I'll choose all the components. If you see here, there's a note mentioning that we need to assign the roles to these users and groups by logging into each component using the local admin account. So we will do that later. I can click on continue. Now we have configured on the management VC management NSX and VA domain VC and NSX with the VCF SSO. Likewise, there are some management components like the operations appliance itself in which we are currently operating and the automation appliance. We can choose to configure the VCF SSO on these appliances as well. I'll click on finish setup for the ones that we have already configured. So there's again a note mentioning that the role assignment needs to be done as local admin in each component, which we will do later. Now we'll go ahead and configure my operations appliance itself with SSO. We can see that our identity broker appliance that we deployed is being shown here. So I can click on configure. Again, the standard disclaimer that we need to go to the component and then assign the roles. We are already in the operations console. So it says we need to go to the access control page of the operations console. So now we will go to the access control page here. I'll try to assign one of the group with the VCF operations role so that all the users in that group will get that particular role that we are going to assign. So I'll go to the user groups tab. Here, I'll select import from source. We have VCF SSO pre-populated here. I'll try to filter out our groups that we have here. We can see that all the 10 groups that are listed here. For the demo purpose, we will select group 1. We need to assign a role to this now. We can select administrator role with the scope of all objects. And we can see that all the users in this particular group are being listed here. So we have user 1, user 2, user 3, and so on till user 10, which are part of this particular group. So now all the 10 group members are assigned with administrator level permissions in the VCF operations. Likewise, let's go to the individual components like vCenter and NSX and do the role assignment for these users. I'm in my management vCenter. In the global permissions page, I can click on add permissions. I'll choose stls.local, which is a domain that is coming from my VCF SSO. I'll search for the same group for which we assign permissions in the VCF operations. I'll select the same group and I'll provide administrator permissions here. Likewise, we will do the same in NSX as well. If you note here, we have logged in as a local admin user here, the vsphere.local. We are now in NSX manager and we have logged in as local admin here as well. So we are in the user role assignment page. So we can go ahead and assign the role here. You see here, we have an option like add role for VCF SSO user group. So we will select this. Now we will search for the same group. So we'll assign the same group 1 that we have assigned admin roles in my vCenter and my VCF operations. Select a role. We'll assign the enterprise admin role. Click on apply, then click on save. Now we have the users of this group getting admin permissions in PC, NSX, and VCF operations. So let us try to log in using one of these user into all 3 components. Since I already logged in here with the local accounts, let's go incognito.
I'll little bit speeden this up because this is just about showing that the same user is able to log into all the appliances.
So So we can see now it allows us to log in with the VCF SSO mechanism. We can also choose local from the dropdown if you want to log in as local user. I'll select which user I want to log in with. I'll log in with user 1. We're able to successfully log into the ops console using this SSO user, which is demo vmg-user-1. Now let's try to log in likewise to VC and NSX as well. I'm opening my vCenter. Here as well, it will allow me to log in using the VCF SSO. Again, you can switch to local as well if required. So as soon as I click on this, it will directly log me in because I'm already logged into my VCF operations console using the SSO user. So you can see that here as well, we are able to successfully log in using the SSO user. Likewise, let's do the same with the NSX as well. Again, we have the SSO and local as the login mechanisms. So as soon as you click login, again, it will be automatically logged in with the user demo vmg-user1. One thing to note here in the SSO login is as soon as you click on login, it will redirect you to the identity broker appliance page. So if you see here, this is the identity broker appliance FQDN. So this is the page where we provide the username and password. So this is how it works in the appliance mode of deployment. We will also quickly see how it works in the embedded mode. We are back to the SSO overview.
Before we did this embedded mode of deployment demo, we have kind of did a reset SSO so that all the existing configuration, whatever we did with appliance mode of deployment is kind of deleted. So now we are restarting here with the embedded mode of deployment.
Page. So I'm going to select my VCF instance. We can now choose the deployment mode. Earlier, we have configured it in the appliance mode. Now let us see how do we configure in the embedded mode. So once we click on the identity broker embedded mode, we will be exactly asked to fill the same details, like what are our identity provider details and what are the components on which we want to configure, and also what are the users and groups that we want to import. For the benefit of time, we will just skip all this and let's show only the login part. How exactly is it different from the appliance way of identity broker deployment? We have now completed the configuration of VCF SSO using the embedded way. We have completed everything that we did with the appliance way of identity broker, like the importing of users and groups, and then selecting the components, and also assignment of component level roles. Now we will just see what is the difference in the login mechanism. I'll again go to the incognito. Let's try to log into the ops console as SSO user. So we can see now it again shows VCF SSO supported login mechanism. The difference that you can now note here is that the login is redirected to the management vCenter, because in case of embedded way of VCF SSO, the identity broker components are sitting inside the vCenter of your management domain, which in our case is mgmt-vc. We'll just try to log in using the same user that we have logged in earlier in the appliance way of identity broker. The user is demo vmg-user-1. We can see that the login succeeds. Likewise, we can do it for vCenter and NSX as well. But one important difference that we need to note is in case of embedded, the login screen redirects us to the management vCenter because the identity broker components are sitting inside the management vCenter. This concludes the demo on VCF SSO. Thank you.
All right, now we will take any questions that we have. Are there any pending questions, Uday?
Yeah, there are a few questions that we can take actually. So can
All
you
right.
just check the Q&A section, please?
Sure, yeah, I'm just going through.
Okay.
I think we have completed till this. We'll go from the question from Srinivasan. For example, I currently have vSphere 6X, 7X, and 8X environments. I'm planning to onboard or upgrade them into existing VCF 9X fleet. What are required steps on the VCF SSO side? Please share any relevant VMware documentation. So VCF SSO can be configured only once you have upgraded your entire stack to VCF 9. And the detailed steps, everything, we have a huge documentation available. So we will share the documentation post the session. For OADC or passkey service, can we use Pocket ID and other open source projects? We have kind of validated with several generic SAML or generic OADC, generic SAML providers. So most likely this might also work, but we haven't explicitly kind of mentioned like what are those generic SAML providers or OADC providers that we support. But most likely this will also work. We have in-house tried things like Keycloak, etc., and which has worked. And I believe Pocket ID will also work as a generic provider. It seems the identity broker configuration steps are getting complex with the UN level of configuration. It would be better if we just control by adding the AD group. Sure, Jayaprakash, we'll take this as a feedback and we will see how we can incorporate this. Thanks. We should have seamless experience. Thank you, Harish. If two node of VCF identity broker down, the third is enough for the SSO to work. Uh, Typically, in a three node clustered environments, we kind of maintain the architecture of active, passive, and witness. But in this case, even if two nodes are down, we are running this as like containers inside. So the third one is also sufficient to serve. The SSO will still continue to work. Is there any troubleshooting of VCF identity broker failures that you are familiar and that you can share here? So the typical identity broker failures could be like, let's say your vCenter is not able to reach to your identity broker FQD, and mostly to do with the networking or the vice versa, those kind of things. But in general, we haven't seen like, it's more of a seamless experience, I would say. All right. Any other questions from anyone?
There was a raise of hand, but I can't see it now. I don't know.
Yeah, I can see someone raising the hand, but also not able to find out who is that. This is what we have in the Q&A section at least.
Yeah. I mean, if there is any other question, feel free to ask. We have a few more minutes left, so we are always happy to take more questions. I think one question came. There is one question. Can you just check, please?
Yeah. Does that embedded identity broker will be deprecated at the future? Right now, we don't have a concrete answer, but we are recommending the customers to go with the appliance way.
Okay.
Gajendra Kushwaha, the identity broker functions similarly to how VIDM worked earlier. We can consider it to be more or less similar, but with several enhanced functionalities here. Support for more IDPs, and then like about the storing of the users and groups. We have several improvements over VIDM versus VIDB. And also we have announced the VIDM deprecation. If you see the documentation of VCF 9.0, so we have announced the VIDM deprecation. So VIDB will be the way going forward.
There is one more.
If I deploy a two fleet, is there any component that manage them or each on its own? Typically, a fleet is on its own. So we can only share the components at fleet level. So even in case of identity broker, if you want to have an identity broker, you need to have a IDB at a fleet level.
Do we have any other question? Yeah, we can allow on there. That is fine.
A couple
Okay.
of new questions, right?
No, those
We
were
told
already
all.
answered. I think we have. There is one more. Haritej. Chat
Okay,
is visible. Why?
VCD is separate from VCF 9. Yeah, so more or less the functionalities in VCD are kind of now getting aligned into VCF automation. So again, I think this is also something that might be deprecated in future.
Okay, I think that's pretty much from SSO side. I can't see any other open questions so far. All right. Thank you everyone for joining this session. It was definitely a helpful one because VCF 9 is already out and people started exploring it at enterprise level with quite good speed. And that is the reason we decided, based on a lot of feedback from the community, we need to have back-to-back sessions on different product features, on integration, and also some troubleshooting steps. We are arranging speakers. Right now, most of the people are working in VMware and they are just trying to share their knowledge. But in case you guys are already started the implementation or in the mid phase and you have a experience that you would like to share, feel free to reach out to me, and we can arrange the session. And definitely our audience are pretty much interested to hear how was your experience, what are the points that we can take from here and do the improvements of VCF 9 as a product which can give benefit for both end user and give you a seamless experience from enterprise virtualization tool perspective. This session has been recorded. We'll be sharing this once the recording will be done, and I'll work with Vikas to prepare a standard page where we can keep all these recordings so that at later point of time you guys can get a chance to review those. And yeah, we'll keep adding a lot of new contents related to VCF 9 soon. Thanks everyone. Thanks Haritej for this wonderful session. Definitely it's very insightful because getting into the product is the beginning point and that's where we just get started today. So down the line, hope we'll be able to share more in terms of SSO tech in VCF 9 plus few other core functionality as it's coming in, right? Thank you. And with that, we are going to close this webinar. Hope to see you guys soon with the new one once we are ready with the next seminar. Thanks guys. Bye. Take care.
Thanks everyone.
Bye.